Now, I have absolutely zero experience in one-handed swords and sabres. My background lies in two-handed swords. Katana mainly is what I used to train in and what I used to do. So my form with two-handed blades is probably going to be absolutely shocking. So for those of you that are HEMA specialists out there, don't criticize me. But anyway, let's do this. Don't you just love medieval combat? Researching the weapons, the tactics, the cultures, how it all clashes together, how you hear the reports of the longbowmen and how you hear the reports of people like the Ottomans, how they would fire arrows and hold the sword and shoot arrows. I find it absolutely fantastic. Welcome back to Journey with Arrows, guys. My name's Dave, for those of you that don't know, and today we are looking at archery with a thumb ring and swords. So shooting with a sword is something that absolutely fascinates me. Being able to use a combination of a bow and a bladed weapon comes in so many benefits. Probably a few cons as well, but it comes with so many benefits. We read a lot of this being undergone by people like the Mamluks, the Islamic State peoples that are over there, the Ottomans, and as far as I'm aware from a reading, correct me if I'm wrong, predominantly it was adopted by horseback archers, although I can see it being incredibly efficient, and I have no reason to believe why it would be something that only the horseback archers used and the foot troops didn't. But as you can see, shooting with a blade allows you to free up the options to continue on attack if somebody comes in close, when you're about to take a shot or once you've taken a shot. And it fascinates me because from a longbow point of view, where you're holding the string with 3 arrows and you're going to take the shot, it doesn't give you that option to be able to hold the bladed weapon at the same time. It's one or the other. There's some really good footage out there of Turkish people, Ottoman people, that are reviving the Ottoman archery, of where they are crouched down and they're holding the bows like this as they load to take the shot, as you've just seen me demonstrate. This is done because they would wear a shield on this arm as well, which is something else that loading the arrow on the thumb side and doing thumb release allows the archer to be able to do that the English longbowman wouldn't find as easy, or certainly not without standing behind a big shield that's in the ground. So having a smaller round shield on the back of your forearm here, as you're loading, when you're crouched, you're a smaller target. You can knock your arrow, you can come over the top and take the shot, and you're back behind that cover again. Again, holding arrows here. I'm sure if any of you do thumb release, you've played around with various different methods of holding arrows, whether it's that way or this way or whichever way of holding arrows. So being able to adapt that from holding an arrow into holding a bladed weapon, I believe is really, really useful, and it absolutely fascinates me, which made me think about it on a little bit of a deeper level. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with swords, or are familiar with swords, this is not a sword. This is, excuse my French, a chassepot bayonet. It's the closest thing that I have to a sabre, a curved blade, that doesn't have a basket. Now, I do believe the majority of the Islamic swords are not equipped with a basket. That certainly makes this motion far quicker and far easier to get into place for when you come to take a shot. When you have a basket, like this one, it becomes a damn sight harder. this is a sabre, and there's a very good reason as to why I didn't use this in the opening of the video. Because it has a basket, it doesn't allow you to roll this back on the wrist or to move your thumb out the way without getting either your thumb or a thumb ring snagged here. So trying to roll this back over the wrist into this position is really, really fiddly, and trying to get any thumb around there to line up for the same movement is not easy. So as a contrast, the easiest thing I found with this was to literally just drop it. You can hold the basket with the back 3 fingers and hold the front 2 to take the shot there. Maybe they did that, maybe they didn't, I have no idea, but that's not something which I've seen, which is the reason why we're not using this. So my next best thing, a bayonet. It's a much shorter blade, but the handle lends itself a little bit easier to demonstrating the technique in which we're looking at today. So this video today is actually more of a question to you guys. I want to hear from you guys, especially if you practice Ottoman archery, if you're trying to revive the techniques in which they used for taking shots and holding bladed weapons. I've looked into it a little bit over the past couple of weeks, and I found a few things that I find work well and don't work well. So I just want to know what you guys think. Have you tried this? Do you have any techniques in which this would be better adapted, or is it something that I'm missing? Purely from an educational point of view, I just want to know what you guys think. So I'll show you what I've discovered after practicing with this for a few times. And yeah, if you've got any tips or information, like, pop it in the comments below, guys. So I think the first thing to note is obviously we have a thumb ring here, which you would assume would be in the way. In all honesty, after playing with it for a little while, it really doesn't seem to get in the way much at all. It's quite comfortable. Obviously it creates a little bit of noise, but even on the sword with a basket, this thumb ring doesn't really feel as though it gets in the way much at all. And I guess if you really wanted to, you could probably roll it around to do it so it's on the outside, but obviously that's going to become a hindrance as of when you're going to come take a shot, because you're going to have to replace your thumb ring back around, and obviously that's going to be a bit of a pain. And as you can see, it's a bit difficult to do with one hand with the camera in. But anyway, having the thumb ring here, it doesn't really hinder me in any movement, in any shape or form. I can still wield the blade. It's not going to cause any issues whatsoever. Now, the one thing I did notice is in the process of rolling this back to mount it into the crook of the elbow, if you keep your thumb this side and do the movement here, you can see it hits the back of my thumb right there, which means that you then have to get this thumb wrapped around the underside and over the top to tuck it in underneath here in order to free up these fingers for shooting. Now that whole motion, as you may have seen for those of you who are eagle-eyed, as you roll this back and you do that motion of getting your thumb on the other side and tucking it in, it rotates the cutting edge of the sword into the crook of your elbow. So, I mean, this sword is blunt, this bayonet's blunt, but that's the cutting edge up against the inside of my arm there. Which obviously, as you're drawing and you're moving backwards and forwards, I wouldn't have thought that would be a very practical or nice thing to experience every time you go to take a shot. So the motion of doing this, rolling it over, that enough is fiddling in itself to tuck it in, I found was a bit of a pain. And like I say, you're going to be potentially cutting your clothing or your crook of your arm in here. So as a martial artist, and for those of you that are probably martial artists yourselves, and probably even the guys back in the Battle of Constantinople or whatever, are going to be doing things which are practical, simple and effective, rather than all this flamboyant stuff. So I found if this was something that was truly done, which obviously people are practicing these days, it would make more sense for this thumb to be moved over to this side of the hilt, which is how I've just been demonstrating in the videos. In moving this thumb over to the other side, you've created space, which this can roll back, and you can automatically tuck it in with the back 3 fingers and come round, which naturally orientates that cutting edge away from the crook of the elbow. So it's sat up on my clothing, it's not doing any damage whatsoever. It's a lot quicker here, and it's done, and the blade is on the inside and not on my arm. So that was the first thing that I found. That was the first thing I found, which I thought was really interesting. Now that's probably the main premises of this video. I want to know if that is the right way with a proper sabre. Obviously I do not have this proper sabre here. But is that the way it would have been done, like so? Because I would have assumed practicality and simplicity would say yes. Because, let's face it, the people back then are not daft. They're going to be doing things which are easy, simple, things that they can practice and that are not going to get them killed on the battlefield. If they're trying to fumble with swords this way and trying to tuck it up underneath this way, they're going to be wasting time. So that's my main focus. If you have any other ideas, guys, like I say, let me know. Now, this isn't a proper cavalry sword. This is most definitely a wall hanger. It's fairly ugly as far as swords go. But I thought for this video it would be a good demonstration as a contrast to the bayonet that we've just seen. So having a hand guard around here does not allow you to roll this back, but it does free you up to just drop the blade and hold it with the back fingers. Now, as a stark contrast to that, I would assume that if you're on the back of a horse and you have the other blade with an open guard and no hilt, that this position, having it rested on the arm as you're moving, is going to be a lot more sturdy with you having 2 points of contact whilst you're trying to take a shot. You're going to be able to keep control of that blade easier than what you would if it would just be dangling it down and swinging around. You're probably going to castrate yourself or bash your equipment. So I can't see how this would have been used on horseback. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe you guys can enlighten me on that. But it's interesting to see that it can still be adapted because of the use of a thumb release, which I find quite interesting. So it would be good to know if you guys maybe have any examples of that as well. The whole concept of using blades and shooting arrows at the same time absolutely fascinates me. Anything to do with medieval combat tactics, the way they would have used, certainly as a martial artist, it's the little intricate things in which I find quite interesting. You can read things and you can get an idea of how things would have been done, but until you actually start to do it and work with principles like with the thumb and really figure out what worked best, what doesn't work, not necessarily things which you might read about. There would be people that would make, maybe say a report, maybe some crusader saw an Ottoman archer fire 3 arrows at once. He's holding 3 arrows, probably something that a longbowman will have never have seen before on the battlefield, that arrows moving at that speed. Horseback archers carrying blades, taking a shot and swinging through and cutting a guy on the way past as well. You would read about these things and doing them, but the practicality elements of it being carried out is probably not something that you would read about, and it's only something that you're going to be aware of when you come to practice these things. Certainly from my background in Japanese martial arts, you will read things as to how they were done, what people would witness, but a lot of it will be passed on through oral instruction. It will be verbally passed down through the generations, not necessarily something that will be written down. Certainly from the Japanese point of view, they would do that. So rather than to write everything down and say, shift your weight this way or whatever, move this way, do that, do this. If somebody got hold of that information that was their enemy, they would literally have written on a piece of paper their tactics and the way in which they would do things. So a lot of the times, the Japanese would throw a curveball in there. They'd say, use your left hand in this motion to create this. And reading it at first glance, you're like, okay, fair enough. But until you come to practice it, you think, well, actually, no, this makes no sense using it with the left hand. It needs to be with the right hand for whatever reason. And they did that on purpose. So it makes me wonder how much of these elements or how much of those elements are distorted in historical findings and manuals as well. So, which is the reason why we practice these things today. We find out what works well, what doesn't work, how can things be adapted, and is it doable? I mean, I don't have a horse. I would love to have a horse and give this a shot. But until then, I'm going to have to stay on my feet. But anyway, guys, a very quick video today. I want to know your thoughts. Share this video out if you can. If you've got any bits of information, feel free to bomb me a message on Instagram. That's Journey with Arrows on Instagram. Leave it in the comments below on YouTube. We have a Facebook page, Journey with Arrows as well on Facebook. So basically, Journey with Arrows across all platforms, being Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. You can find me on all 3 of those. So just bomb us a message, let me know If you've got any links or anything, I'd love to see those, because it's just something I find really interesting. And I am planning one day we're going to get a proper sabre, we're going to get a proper Ottoman shield, and we're going to drill some tactics in regards to actually using the bow with a sword and a shield. So till then, thank you very much for your audience, guys. Thank you for sticking with me, and till next time, I'll see you then.